It's a good day to brew, baby. What is up, YouTube? It's your boy, Millsy, back with Thumbtack Commander, back for another episode of Millsy Updates, the show where I update my personal and test decks on my quest out brew the magic world. You know the motto, baby. It's ABB, always be brewing it, and that's what we're back to do today. The deck list is going to be down in the description for you below. So I'd really appreciate it if you could interact with the video, like, comment, subscribe, do all that fun YouTube stuff. I'd appreciate it. But today, we're actually covering our last deck of mine before we get to Tarkir. We didn't cover Miram yet, but I totally plan to cover Miram when we get to Tarkir because of all the dragons. And the last deck I want to cover today, I think, is actually going to get a ton of support in Tarkir from all the cards we've seen so far. And that's Caesar, Legion's Emperor, a 4-mana Mardu human soldier. It says whenever we attack, we can sacrifice another creature. If we do, we get to choose 2. Make 2 1/1 red and white creature tokens with haste that are tapped and attacking. Draw a card and lose a life, or the big deal. Deal damage equal to the number of creature tokens we control to target opponent. Caesar has been a deck that I've really enjoyed. I think it's because, for me, Jetmir's kind of always been this mid-range, get to 9 slam tokens in deck. And it's never really got to take advantage of ETB-style abilities or things that really care about attacking, at least to the degree that Caesar does. But the cool part here with Caesar is that you want tokens to be coming in, you want tokens to be attacking, and we have so much access in these 3 colors to do some really fun things. The other thing we have access to do in these 3 colors that I could never really do in Jetmir was Aristocrats, and Caesar does have a lot of options for that, which is a big part of our deck as well. So I want to say a quick thank you to the channel members. Thank you so much for supporting the channel. If you're interested in supporting the channel for just $1 a month to see all the videos early, check out that link down below the video. But I think it would be pretty hard to have a token deck without ways to make tokens, and there's so many of them across so many different styles in the deck. Part of our engine for making tokens is making tokens, traditionally, and then part of it's making them on attacks. We're going to kind of cover both. I've avoided doublers in the deck, or I've tried to. I have 1 or 2 in the deck, but I've tried to go all out. I've tried to avoid going all out with them. But I've really enjoyed Kaya Geist Hunter. It's a doubler that only works for the turn. You -2 if 1 or more tokens will be created under your control. Twice that many tokens are created instead until the end of turn. I like this because if we can stack the right turn, Kaya becomes a really great way to get us double tokens at the right time. But I think the other thing I really like about Kaya is her +1, giving all of our creatures death touch and then putting a token onto a creature token. What I like about what I like about this is mainly that Caesar's whole goal is to dump tokens on the battlefield and get attacking. And I think what I see our deck struggle with sometimes is we can go wide, but sometimes we just we need Caesar's ability to close the game. What I like about Kaya is that you're adding a layer of threat to your opponents, that they can't just chump our 1/1s anymore. They become big threats, and our opponents have to think about that. Charismatic Conqueror has been in pretty much all of my token decks that matter since the day I saw it got spoiled. Whenever another artifact or creature enters the battlefield untapped and under an opponent's control, they could tap it. If they don't, we get a 1/1 vampire. Again, just a way to get some tokens. And if we have any way to buff or manipulate those 1/1s, now we're potentially gaining more life. Gisa is a little expensive at 5 mana. But what I like about Gisa is whenever you commit a crime, you make 2 tap 2/2 blue and black zombie rogue creature tokens. This ability triggers only once each turn. Well, the nice thing about Caesar is that, on a modal spell, you're putting it on the stack and you're targeting an opponent, which means you're going to commit a crime by targeting an opponent, and you're going to make those zombies. And then those zombies are going to be 3/3s with menace, and so they're going to be nice threats to your opponents, and you can hopefully get those every turn. Obviously with Caesar's abilities, but we have other ways to do it as well. Mondrak's our other doubler. I mainly just like that for a mana, you can sack 2 other creatures to give it an indestructible, go away a little bit to protect it, and it makes sacrificing 1 thing to get 4 tokens from Caesar a really huge swing. Mural helps protect us on our turn, preventing our opponents from casting spells or activating abilities of certain permanent types. But whenever she attacks, we get to make soldiers equal to the number of soldiers we control. This is really important because Caesar's a soldier. The token Caesars make is soldiers. and there's other soldiers in the deck. So Miro can actually make a decent amount of these tokens. And pretty much the rule of this deck is if you have on attack triggers, you're going to have all of them go off before Caesar. So that way when we finally get to Caesar, we can sacrifice the right things, get our things and build up upon that. I love Ocelot Pride. It is not a cheap card, but it is very good at what it does. Beginning your end step, if you gain life this turn, we make a cat. Then if we have the City's Blessing, for each token we control that enters the battlefield this turn, we make another token that's a copy of it. Ocelot Pride has lifelink, of course, but there are other things in the deck that have lifelink, and we have other ways to give our creatures lifelink to try to synergize with that Ocelot Pride. I love Toby. Toby not only brings a beast in with him, but also when you hit 4 more creature tokens, they all get flying. A good way to give them that piece of evasion that could make a difference in combat, especially when you start doming people out with Caesar's ability. 4th Orlingas and Temp with Vengeance, both ways to make tokens. They come in with haste, they get in and attack, and just raise the count, right, for Caesar when we do get into combat. Same thing with something like Secure the Waste, use it on our opponent's turn before our turn, that way those tokens can get attacking. Grand Crescendo kind of combines all the great parts of Secure the Waste with a protection spell, allowing us to give all of our creatures indestructible and make some tokens. I just like that. At minimum, Grand Crescendo is a double white, give all your creatures indestructible. At maximum, you make some tokens alongside it. Caretaker's Talent can give you that card draw, and then eventually can, eventually can either get up to level 2 to make a copy of a token you have, and then level 3 buff all your tokens, which I think is huge. But I think where the deck to me goes from just making tokens to being wanting to do it even better is doing it on attack, right? We want to be attacking, so why not try to pour in as many abilities as we can on attack? A card that may look out of place but is really good when you think about it is Sorin. So Sorin Vengeful Bloodlord is a commander or a planeswalker from War of the Spar. It says as long as it's your turn, creatures and planeswalkers you control have lifelink. At the surface, that's going to seem odd because you're going to go, oh, we just have a bunch of 1/1s. But remember, Caesar would have lifelink, meaning when it deals damage to our opponents, we're gaining that much life, and then we gain all that life in combat. When I've seen Sorin in games, I mean, it really pads your life total and really helps your opponents have to really find a way to deal with Sorin. The other thing I really like about Sorin is you want to be +2ing him every turn just to poke a damage out, and then you're going to use the -X when you need to bring something back. Adeline, whenever you attack, Adeline doesn't even have to attack. Same thing with the Nimble Call beside it. But Adeline just makes a 1/1 human attacking all your opponents. Again, that's 3 extra tokens that we get that turn. A Nimble Call, whenever you attack with 1 or more non-gnome creatures, puts a counter on Nimble Call, and then makes a X1/1 gnomes equal to the number of counters on it. Again, a great way to start getting more and more tokens on the battlefield, especially turn over turn. I think that's the really important part. Arabella is going to chunk our opponents out for some damage, where X is the number of creatures we control with power 2 or less whenever we attack. This is probably an example of the only ability you're probably going to, besides a Severina Rain next to it, probably the only example of an ability that you're going to want to resolve after Caesar and not before it. Right? Making sure to take advantage of all those tokens from Caesar coming in, tapped and attacking, and dealing damage. Same thing with Severina Rain. She and Mishra, who's on the next page, were some of the first creatures I put into this deck. This is whenever she attacks, each opponent loses X, and we don't gain X like we do on Mishra on the next page, but loses X, where X is the number of other attacking creatures. So remember, because Inimpakal and Adeline and Caesar all bring those tokens in tapped and attacking, they are going to count for the purposes of Severina Rain's ability. Ishin, of course, can double up on Caesar and a lot of other great abilities in this deck. Love to see it. And of course, in Tarkir, we just saw that brand new one that's going to enchantment that's going to help us do the same. Krenko, when it attacks, puts a counter on it, makes a bunch of goblins equal to its power. Love this one, especially if you can buff it up in any way. There's the Mishra we were talking about. Each opponent loses X, and we gain X, where X is the number of attacking creatures. Great ability. If you double up with the Ishin, it gets even worse. And then you put Caesar on top of it, and you're just doling out damage. Warren War Leader has that offspring mechanic from Bloomborough. And you get your choice. You can make a rabbit that's tapped at attacking, or you can just give all your creatures +1/+1 until end turn. Again, another example, if you're going to choose the +1/+1, another example of an ability we're going to want to resolve after Caesar, so that the things that Caesars bring in get that buff. But hey, getting a rabbit token every turn is helpful. And when you have Offspring, right, think about it, that and its copy are both getting you +2/+2 until end of turn. Mardu Ascendancy is a pretty classic option in these, Ishin attacking style matters decks. Whenever a non-token creature we control attacks, we put a red goblin token onto the battlefield tapped and attacking. Of course, great when it's doubled, but at minimum, could just gain you a couple goblins in that token. In that combat. I've loved Dollmaker Shop since the second it's been released. Whenever one or more non-toy creatures we control attack a player, we make a toy. That toy is just really nice to either sacrifice to Caesar if we want to, or just account for our total. And then when you get to the amount of mana, you can turn on the Porcelain Gallery just to turn all your creatures to be really big. Rabble Rousing is another one of those that works so well with Caesar. Whenever you attack with one or more creatures, you make that many citizen creature tokens. Again, you're hopefully just doubling your amount of creatures, hopefully maximizing the amount of tokens you have, and just really doling out big damage. Like I said, in Jetmir, when I first built the deck, I tried to have this ETB damage, subsection in the deck, but the truth is, it just ended up taking away from some of what I wanted from the speed from the deck. But Caesar wants it because the whole goal is to make tokens when we attack. Just one of these abilities could lead to 8 or 9 damage in one turn. Agate Instigator, General Crete. Both of these are dealing damage to each opponent whenever a creature comes in. Instigator can get a copy of itself, so for 4 mana, you're getting 2 damage to each of them when they come in, right on that Perforos rate. Crete is just 1 to each opponent, but it also makes you a goblin every time one or more goblins attack. So whether Crete attacks or the goblin that it makes attacks at a future turn, you're getting more of them. Enduring Courage has been really nice in this deck because very rarely are you using it to give haste to the tokens you make this turn, although it's very useful for that. Most of the time, you're using this to buff the creatures that are coming in off these attack abilities. Now these 1/1s are coming in as 3/1s, which are technically harder to deal with from your opponents, right? And you're starting to see it wear on your opponents a little bit more in those combats. Of course, we're playing Perforos, we're paying War Leader's Call, really doubling up on this damage being done. But a key card for me that I've seen work so many times is Golden Knight Commander. Whenever another creature comes in, creatures we control get +1/+1 on the turn. It's kind of Cathar's Crusade, right? But without the counter. But what I like about this card is Caesar's making at minimum 2 soldiers, right? That's if you don't pair it with Adeline or an Impicall or something else. And you can start to see where Golden Knight Commander could be really good just buffing your board and making them a real threat for your opponents to deal with. But I think the most recent thing I've been defining and kind of targeting in the deck is Aristocrats, how to make it better. Because Caesar's already, killing one creature, sacrificing one creature on our combat. But we can also do it in other ways. But I want to try to find ways to really gamify it. Alasso Core makes sense. You gain a life when creatures come in. Each one loses life whenever one of our creatures dies. Makes sense. Mirkwood Bats, losing our opponent a life whenever tokens come in or are sacrificed to great ability. Alenda was a more recent include, because I realized Alenda's just going to grow. Right? She's going to grow as another creature dies, and then eventually you could sack her to Caesar, still get a bunch of the 1/1 tokens, and then still activate Caesar, right, for the best of both worlds. Bastion, giving that classic lose one, gain one whenever a creature dies. Pitiless Plunder can get us treasures when we sacrifice our tokens. A great way to leave up mana for things like protection and removal. And then, of course, we got to get a little bit mean with our Aristocrats using things like Grave Pact. Have our opponents have to sacrifice creatures whenever one of our creatures dies. And this really just hurts our opponent's chances to deal with our board effectively while still keeping ourselves on the Force Wing. But as far as recent adds, we talked about Alenda. Caretaker's Talent, I'll admit, didn't go in the deck right away. It probably should have, now that I think about it. But hey, that's okay. That's why we talk on the channel so much about testing and learning your decks. But Howl Squad Heavy was a card as soon as I saw it. It went in Jetmir and it went in here. Mainly because there are so many other things in this deck that make goblins. I knew Howl Squad was going to be good. And Howl Squad's going to make us a goblin every turn, like Goblin Rebel Master and Legion War Boss that are already in the deck. So it makes sense. I feel like it was a good fit. But I've said it before on the show, and I'll say it again. No deck's ever complete. Caesar's a deck I've been testing and I've been trying to build for a long time, and I always learn things. And here's just a couple of cards that have been sitting in the top of my maybe board that I've been really considering over the last couple weeks. Coat of Arms is a card I truly love. It's a card that most of the time ends up being a finisher. It's just a problem in games where your opponents can help take advantage of it just as much as we can. I think I'm considering maybe trying Banner over it instead because there's a lot of soldiers in the deck. But if I'm honest, I don't think we need it. I think a lot of the times we have enough other pieces in the deck to take advantage of things like Shared Animosity or Cathar's Crusade over it. And I think there's other ways to do that. Taste of Karlov is a card that's come in and out of this deck. I really like the top ability, especially when it comes to our aristocrat-y type pieces. The bottom ability I also love as well. Lifelink is huge. I just feel like I'm always competing for slots when I sit down to edit the deck. And I feel like Teysa will come back in. It's just a matter of finding that slot. And then Elspeth, of course, great token engine, allows you to make some tokens, destroy some creatures. I like Elspeth. I just think she's a little expensive for what I think the deck is trying to do. But let's get into the thing we love to do the most on the channel, and let's get into our playtest. Remember, the goal of our playtest is not to find magical Christmas land. It's not to find out our best plays. It's to get into some game scenarios and understand how we set up our deck. Here we're keeping a 3-lander with 2 talismans, Rain, and 4th Orlingas. I think my favorite thing about Orlingas is that it brings those tokens in with Trample and Haste so they could become real threats. Here, I mean, we have nothing to do in turn 1. Might as well just stick a land in tapped. Turn 2, we'll get our talisman down. Now, the thing with Caesar is unless we have something to use Caesar's ability, we don't need to slam Caesar down, the turn that we can. Like here, we don't need to play Caesar. I think it makes more sense to slam like Rain down and get this talisman down, just so that way we're still at 3 mana here. I'll go up to 5 mana next turn, and now we've got something that can start attacking, right, and threatening our opponents. The other thing that we don't want to do quite yet is I don't have any tokens yet. Caesar has to sacrifice something to get tokens, so we kind of also need to think about it that way. This turn could be fun to do like Orlingas for 4. Make a couple human knights. That way next turn, right, we can still get the Severina trigger this turn, and next turn we could play Caesar and sack one of the knights, right, to get into our game plan. Because now we're looking at Caesar for 4. We got 3 mana up, so we're leaving this Grand Crescendo to really protect ourselves. There's, I guess, 2 ways to look at this. We could take the turn off and convoke into something like City on Fire if we really wanted to do that. But I think it makes more sense just to get attacking. Sack the knight. Make the soldiers for his first ability. And then I guess there's 2 schools of thoughts here. Severina Rain's already knocking everybody for probably 5 this turn, right? Because, Caesar can't attack, right? So probably at least 5 this turn. Do we need to do Caesar's bond ability, or does it make more sense to draw, right? I kind of like the idea of just drawing this one, just to refill our hand a little bit. We still have that Crescendo up to protect, and maybe even add another token for us. And then as we come back to our next turn, now we're sitting at 8 mana. Does it make sense to go deep into a Crescendo? I kind of like the idea of offspringing the Warren War Leader this turn, just to add another piece or token or 2 to the board. But my main thought here is now we can double buff our creatures. Go to combat. My thought is sack one of the soldiers that we had, make 2 more. Then have War Leader go off, so all these have +2/+2, right, from the 2 War Leaders. And then Rain goes off to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 7 damage to everybody. I don't mind replacing his bottom ability with Rain or Mishra, but here I think I'm also going to dome somebody for 7, right? There's no reason not to compound on to that damage, right? I start really threatening our opponents. We could have also focused on the War Leaders actually adding 1/1s if we wanted to. We would have had a Severina Rain deal 9 instead of 7, and then we would have had 9 damage off of Caesar. But I think it's one of those things where you have to consider what's best in the moment. If my opponents have a ton of 1/1s, I think the +2/+2 makes more sense to really force them to take some bad blocks on us for some damage while we're doming them out. But if we're attacking and getting in fairly unimpeded, I think I might think about doing that instead, making the 1/1s and doing the abilities, because neither of the War Leaders are attacking this turn. So I think we don't have to, right? And then we come back to our next turn. We could 3-tree City for Soldier, and then probably just put City on Fire down now. We have the great ability to use this Ruinous Ultimatum if we need to, but I mean, just City on Fire almost certainly starts the process of potentially ending the game this turn. Now anything Caesar doles out is going to be tripled. We'll go to combat, do the same thing, and I think it makes more sense probably to get at least one rabbit this turn. So now Caesar's dealing out 9, which would be tripled to 27. You're potentially knocking somebody out there. And then Severina's doing 10, 11, or 12 damage this turn to everybody. I mean, and that's going to get tripled, right? Loss of life, I apologize. So not going to get tripled, but still really hurting our opponents. And then combat, City on Fire can really just take and explode this board. But I also would be more than willing just to leave Grand Crescendo up. Because think about it, with the 3-tree City out, I'm tapping it for 4, 5, 6. So I actually probably would be able to have a bunch of mana up to play that City on Fire, right, and keep Grand Crescendo up. Let's go into playtest number 2. I think we pretty much got there on that one. Keeping a 3-lander with a Talisman, Sorin, War Leader's Call, and Adeline. Of course, we like to see War Leader's Call, a good way to start damaging our opponents, and Adeline, right, great way to start making tokens. Here we'll get our Talisman down. Here, I think we're a turn off attacking, so we might as well just play Adeline this turn. My thought is this turn, we could either play War Leader's Call, and we're going to get a couple damage, right, from those humans coming in. Or we could play Sorin, right? Adeline would be attacking, and we could gain some life. I guess Caretaker's Call talent could make sense as well to draw, right? Because we're for sure making one this turn. That's not a bad idea. Have the humans get in and attack. Adeline has to attack to do it, but she's going to be a 4/4. I'm sure we can find a safe place to get her in. Now on turn 5, we've got 6 mana. I like getting Caesar down this turn, but it's going to take most of the mana we have. I guess we could do it and keep Boros Charm up. I kind of like the idea of trying to get like War Leader's Call or Sorin down just to really gain that life. Because we could do like Sorin and tick. Let's say a human survived. I mean, we don't know if all 3 of the humans survived. But let's see if one did. We could tick the Caretaker's Allen up to make a copy 1 to draw, and then tick Sorin up to deal damage out. Now attack again. I mean, gain some life, right? My thought is just to try to build up our board of tokens before we completely commit to Caesar. Now I think I'm more willing to commit to Caesar on this turn. We could get if our opponents are pretty tapped out, I think I go for the War Leader's Call, right? Really take advantage of the damage. If I think they have something, I just leave up the Boros Charm, right? Sack a human to Caesar to get the soldiers. We just tick up Sword again, right, to kill the 1 damage. But that should mean that, between the 3 humans we're making on Adeline's attack and those 2 soldiers, right, drawing off the Caretaker's talent, now we could either dome somebody or draw again. I think doming somebody probably makes more sense this turn, so we can start getting that damage on board, and since we gain life for it. So we're going to be probably holding a pretty nice level of life, extra life gain. And there's Mishra. I wish we had any way to give it haste. That's right, we don't have to give it haste because its ability goes off no matter what. So I think Mishra, right, to really take advantage of the amount of creatures attacking. I think I'd probably, again, still just hold up Boros Charm. I mean, there's probably the argument you could just go Mural here and shut off anybody's ability to use things. But I think Mishra makes more sense because you attack with these 8, right? 3 more humans, knock 1 to get 2 more soldiers. These are all attacking, so Mishra's going to count the number of attacking creatures. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Everybody loses 12. We gain 12. Then Caesar's going to dome somebody for 10, right? And then we're still going to get the lifelink. And I think this is just where Sorin, as long as it stays alive, can be so useful for us. Let's get into playtest number 3. Even a 4-lander with Talisman, Mardu Ascendancy, and Prosperous Partnership. The Partnership is a card I really, really like. It is a enchantment that comes in and makes 2 citizen tokens, and then you could tap 3 untapped creatures to make a treasure. I just like it because if you have a bunch of untapped creatures, it's just a great way to use, for mana. I like Mishra. But I actually have no way of getting Mardu Ascendancy down here. I also don't have a way of getting Prosperous Partnership down either, so I guess I have to get Mishra. I just realized that this Sanctum was my only white source in my hands. We need to get down. Ooh, Agate kind of changes my mind there. I like Mardu trying to get it in and get it going. Prosperous Partnership could make sense. But 6 mana, I've only got 1 white. Agate's 4 if I want to offspring it. I can't play both of these. But I could, play the Partnership and tap them in Mishra, to get a treasure for next turn. Right, try to stock up some more mana. That kind of makes the most sense. Tap them on my opponent's turn before we come back to our turn. That way we've got that spare treasure. So now we're at 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 mana. And we've got another treasure. Now we could go like Sorin plus Caesar this turn. Tick that up, attack, get rid of a citizen, make a couple soldiers. I think I'd probably draw here just to get some more cards in my hands. Mishra's doming everybody for 3, and we're gaining 3. Or sorry, probably 4, because it would be attacking 2. And then, we drew the card. Now we're in great shape because we're gaining life right back from that. And then coming back to our next turn, we could go Mardu Ascendancy plus the Agate Instigator for its copy, and then, sack the citizen, 2 soldiers, and then I think we can just keep this game plan going unless anybody gets rid of Sorin or Caesar or even Mishra. I mean, we're gaining a ton of life, we're dealing a ton of damage, and I just think we're in great shape. But let me know, what do you think of Caesar down in the comment section below? Like I said, it's a deck that I'm really excited for Tarkir. That Mardu clan has a ton of love for this deck, and it's made me already ask questions about if I want to try Zergor or if I want to stay with Caesar. I think I want to stay with Caesar, but I think I can definitely affect some change into this deck. And you will see my changes for Caesar fairly soon on the channel. Probably not for a few weeks, but you'll see an idea I have coming for this section of updates for the next set. So I'd love to show that to you. You'll see it here soon, starting pre-con week, and I will catch you all in the next one.